Football Friday here on Birds 365. It's still a little bit of a stretch. They haven't started playing football yet, but it's close enough. Damn, we're down to 9 days before the Eagles season gets underway. You got your Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald, hanging with you. Let's see. 1 week from today, John McMullen, will you be traveling? Will the Eagles be traveling? We're getting that much closer to opening day. What's the itinerary look for next Friday?
Next Friday, the Eagles will be practicing at the
Probably
Novacare
walkthrough,
complex.
right?
Yeah. Friday practices are light, and then they'll head up there, obviously, on Saturday, and game day on Sunday. So typical NFL week: Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are the main practices. You'll get an extra day in. It's still tentative, but I expect the Eagles to be back on Tuesday after Labor Day weekend. It might be Monday. It's up to Nick, but and he could give them off Tuesday, but I don't see why he would do that. So it's most likely going to be Tuesday. So they'll get sort of an extra day. You have this extra time, but yeah, and then we're off and running, Jody McDonald.
But then it's downtime because of the CBA. It is amazing that they negotiate out.
Yeah, Friday, you got to get them off. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, gotta have off players.
That is, we've talked about this way too many times. It's the only thing the players win on when they go collect the bargaining. They don't ever get any more money. That percentage of gross revenues never jumps up. But hey, we'll give you extra days off. We'll shorten up those practices for you. Okay, fine. That's the only win.
Quality of life. That's what D. Smith would say when he tries to frame his wins. Now we got to learn the new NFLPA executive director.
Right, but he's not looking at any collective bargaining agreement anytime soon. So don't know how he's going to affect quality of life of the players very quickly. But it does present a question, John. And I had to eat crow last year because the Eagles, it seems like, and you always put me in my place and go, Jody, it's collective bargain. You can't do anything about it. The Eagles can't do more. You're making it sound like they're skipping practice. Well, they're skipping practices they can't have as per collective bargaining, but they have amounts of time that they can practice, and they're always under the number. The Eagles just believe that less is more, that they practice smarter, not harder. And I thought it was questionable last season. And how many games they play before they lose, Johnny Mac, last year? When they start? 7-0, 8-0. I don't even remember off the top of my head.
They were really good. Yeah. I've turned the page on last year. I'm much like Nick Sirianni. So that's for other people when I muck in. But yeah, they were really good last year. 14-1 with the starting quarterback. They lost to Washington. That was the game. I forget what they were at the time, but they were a very good team. And yeah, I mean, it's hard to criticize the way they set things up. And not only were they very good, and this tends to be the outcome of very good teams, they're very healthy. That's because if you lose a bunch of players, you tend to be very uneven, at least, even if you have a good roster like the Eagles. But we talked about it a lot, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Forget about 17 games. These guys are playing 20 games. They went all through the Super Bowl. Even go back to 2017 when they won the Super Bowl, they lost a bunch of players, from key players, and were able to persevere. So talk about a special season. That was a special season, but Jason Peters, Jordan Hicks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You had Halapoli Bati Baitai. A lot of people are forgetting starting at left tackle in the Super Bowl. So last year was, we talked about a lot. TJ Edwards, 20 games. Kaiser White, 20 games. Darius Slade, James Bradbury, Marcus Epps, on and on and on and on. A couple guys got banged up. Dallas missed 5 games, but when you compare it to the rest of the league, it's pretty damn good. So it's hard to say, "Oh, you did it wrong." I mean, I don't like it. I'm more in the Andy Reid camp. If you give me a certain amount of time, I'm going to take that time. I'm going to take all that time. The Eagles, you know, there's they'll cut practice shorter. They'll do more walkthroughs, but it's hard to criticize them right
Not
now.
off last year's results. You have to say that they got it right and they know what they're doing. We'll see if that's the case again this year because it worked last year. We'll find out if it works this year again. Going back to the schedule, and we'll be nitpicking this apart on an almost daily basis going forward. They have an easier part of the schedule in the beginning of the year. It just is the fact, Jack. They've got a killer run in the middle of it, but New England, not great. Minnesota at home. Tampa's going to be bad. The Washington, and they owe Washington the only home game they lost last year with Jalen Hurts starting quarterback Washington. So you know they're going to be up for that. Rams not good. That's an easy part of the schedule. So I'll give them credit if they get out of the gate 5-0 again after going 8-0 at the beginning of last year. But it is an easier part of the schedule. So you got to take those factors in when you're evaluating how the Eagles are actually doing. Some roster moves yesterday, John. We knew it was coming. The Eagles weren't. That's one where they're not going to go on less is more. They're going to take as many players as possible because it gives them more that they can do. And Jeff Lurie is willing to pay for a full practice squad. Every other team in the league does too. So they signed 3 guys who are outside the organization for preseason. We mentioned the cornerback from the Chargers that I think it was Tim McManus had it first that he was.
Yeah, it was Tim. T. Mullen. Looks like a slot guy, because he's 5'8", 181 pounds, undrafted rookie from Indiana. So, they need some slot help without Zach McPherson. That makes sense to me. They brought our old friend LaRaven Clark back as a veteran player. Hey, why not? I'm not in love with their depth on the offensive line, at least compared to recent history. So to get a veteran guy who sort of knows the system, knows how to play, I think that makes a lot of sense. And then the other guy was Thomas Booker, second-year defensive tackle from Stanford. Now that I say, well, you need another defensive tackle. That nothing against Thomas Booker. He might be a good prospect, good player, but I don't know. How about another linebacker? And again, people will look at the roster, and I got it right in front of me. They'll look at the roster and say, "Well, Kyron Johnson's a linebacker." I can't say this so many times. There's edge players and there's all-ball linebackers. I'm talking about all-ball linebackers that have 3 on the 53-man as we stand today. Still time. As I said, don't lock things in until Wednesday of next week, probably Wednesday morning. That's sort of when they want to have everything exactly where they want it. They have 3 on the 53-man, and then Ben Van Sumeren on the practice squad, who's, tremendous athlete. We talked about him a lot. I think he might be able to help on special teams, but if you're down to him and you have to play him at off-ball linebacker, you're going to have some issues. So, I would have went a little bit deeper at certain other positions than defensive tackle, who they can't even get to Contavious Street. I can't even predict the way Contavious Street can get on the field. That's how deep they are at defensive tackle.
And the thing that surprised me about the Booker signing, and he was a draft pick last year by the Texans. He actually played. He got like 200 snaps last year, which just buries a guy like Nakobe Dean, who got all of 34. He actually played last year, which is a nice thing. He's had some experience. 302 pounds or something like that. Because, John, they spent a lot of time trying to find and brought a bunch of guys in, even on the short term, late in the preseason type deals. to find a quote unquote backup for Jordan Davis, a true guy to play in the middle with the 50-man line whose pure job is to take up two guys and make it easier for everybody else. They still don't have that guy, do they?
No, they don't. And that's why I thought, who knows? They brought in those guys for quick looks at the end of training camp. Robert Cooper, Caleb Sanders, who are big, big guys in that way. And I thought, well, maybe they like one of them and they'll bring them back to the practice squad. Evidently not. Booker, he's sort of more of a tweener guy. He played the edge really at Stanford. And he's a little bit too big for that at the NFL level, so they moved him inside. Maybe they think he's a good prospect, and it's just one of those things. And he's a good player, and it's more about that than anything else. But yeah, I mean, it's it's nitpicking, and that's what you do with good teams. But yeah, they certainly don't have that. Natural backup for Jordan Davis in that 50 role with the 50 fronts, nose tackle, shade tackle. They don't have a backup. So if Jordan goes down, like last year, he missed the 4 games with the high ankle sprain, and he really wasn't healthy after that. He came back and wasn't completely healthy. So if that happens again, we talked about health. He's again one of the few players that did miss some time. You're going to have to play somebody out of positions like they did last year with Javon Hargrave. The year before, last year, they brought in Linval Joseph to sort of settle things down after getting a quick look at Marvin Wilson. Yeah, they don't have that player.
They don't have that guy, which is and I'm both buoyed by it and perturbed by it because they understand they're still on the lookout for it. The fact that they couldn't fill it, they might have high standards for what they need that guy to do. Maybe they're comparing him to Jordan Davis.
Yeah, there's not a lot of guys with 340 pounds that can move like Jordan Davis. So
exactly.
But you can find. I mean, Linval was a really good player earlier in his career. Different type of player, just unbelievably strong. But 335, actually, Linval hasn't seen 335 in years, but that's what they list him at. Just a really big, massive guy that's tough to move. I think it's more likely you can find somebody like that, but they haven't been able to do it yet. And maybe that's an indication that if they do lose, and this might be a positive, if they do lose a player like Davis, maybe they'll play differently, which is probably the way you should do it, and play more 40 fronts, and go about it that way. That's one thing I've seen about Sean Desai. I've mentioned it a couple times. He seems more willing to try some different things than Jonathan Gannon. Maybe that's the positive people are looking for when they talk about the change in defense, because the philosophy is going to be the same.
All right, I'm going to give you 2 choices here, and then we're going to punch up our first guest. Got 2 good guests coming up today. I'll give you the rundown on that in a second. If here are your 2 choices, number 1, Jordan Davis goes down. It's going to miss 6 weeks, 8 weeks. It's not a week-to-week thing. It's definitely a month plus. So he's going to be out for a period of time, kind of like last year. They've got 2 choices as to how to handle it. Number 1, adjust the defense and play a little bit differently than they want to, or put that call into Linval Joseph and see if we can start the mercenary clock a little early. If Davis should get hurt in week number 4, that he is the guy, and they go right back down the same road they did yesterday. Go get an experienced guy, long in the tooth, has a particular reason he wants to play, chasing rings, as McMullen likes to say. Which do you think is more likely? The Eagles adjust and find a different way, or get that phone call into Linval?
I'm going to take door number 3.
3? You got a door number 3? Where you going, McMullen?
Marlon Tui-Pelotu is going to fill in, at least be given the opportunity to fill in. A lot of people forget Marlon got hurt.
Was Marlon hurt by the time?
Yeah, Marlon got hurt. That was the issue. A lot of people say, well, Jordan got hurt. They went, Well, yeah, Jordan got hurt, but Jordan and Marlon got hurt. Like if Marlon didn't get hurt, I'm not going to say they wouldn't have signed Linval Joseph, but they would have given him the opportunity first to see if he could handle the job. And if he couldn't, then maybe they would have made the call. But he was hurt. So he'll be given the opportunity, much like Marvin Wilson was last year, but it skipped over Marlon. Like he was given that one chance in Houston, and then they were like, all right, we got to go do something. And that's sort of what happened. But Marlon will get the first opportunity. And here's the problem, Jody. He's an underrated player. He's a pretty good player. And he's not going to fall apart in that type of situation. But he's not going to be great either. So it's kind of like that to me, that's what's going to happen. That's not necessarily the best thing, but he's going to be competent. I'll use that word. So they're not going to be desperate and they're not going to go outside. That would be my prediction.
We hope to never see how it shakes out because it's incumbent on Jordan Davis getting hurt. None of us want to see Jordan Davis get hurt, but the job of the team is to be prepared in case stuff happens. All right, we try and come prepared every single day, and that includes bringing in outside opinions. So we've got two good ones of them coming today. A little in the later show, Brad Spielberger from PFF, cap analyst and also contributor for overthecap.com is going to jump in, talk some league-wide stuff, but we're going very Eagles-centric next. Co-host of the Eagles post-game show right here on JAKIB Media and host of the Mike Missinelli podcast, aptly named, may I mention, the Mike Missinelli podcast.
That is aptly named. Aptly named. I like it.
Mike Missinelli. Mikey Mitt's going to join us next here on